Newswatch with me, Samira, Ahmed. Next week sees the start of a new channel named simply BBC News. What difference will viewers of the current BBC News channel see, and why the change? Next Monday marks a big moment in the evolution of BBC News, with the start of a single news operation for both domestic and international audiences. We've already noted on this programme some changes associated with the move and your reaction to them, and there will be further alterations in the coming months. But it's a good time to take stock, and we'll be doing so in a moment with the man running the new service. Before that, though, how did we get here? The corporation's first foray into 24-hour news was dedicated to audiences abroad. BBC World Service Television, as it was called at first, could not be seen in the UK and was funded by subscription in some parts of the world and advertising in others.
Good evening. This is the BBC World Service News. I'm Ed Mitchell. The headlines tonight.
6 years later, domestic audiences got their own channel, News 24.
Hello and welcome for the first time to BBC News 24.
Since then, with a couple of changes of name, the two services have run in parallel, with some content being shared, a trend that's increased recently. But against the background of a decline in the BBC's income, with a 2-year freeze in the licence fee, the BBC announced last summer that there would be a new unified channel, though UK viewers will receive specific content, such as this programme, at certain times of the day and during certain news stories. It'll be broadcast from London during the day and Singapore and Washington during the night. But some viewers have been telling us they fear there will be a downgrade from the current news channel. Annette Glazer wrote to us a few weeks ago begging, "Please don't merge the BBC News channel with BBC World. The BBC News channel is good as it is. Their coverage of UK news is excellent, and I'm afraid that will be lost." Diane Roberts echoed that. "I have bought a licence fee for decades, and that is because, as well as hearing world news, I like to hear news that is local to me. News from around the UK unites us. The BBC has always been an important part of our British culture, and sadly the institution is in danger of losing that position." Others were concerned about the practicalities, with Terry Pearson emailing, "I can't see how this merger can possibly work for UK licence payers, who are the ones paying the bill. Since BBC World is the exercise of soft power, then it quite rightly should be paid for by the government. I think we're going to end up with a channel that's not fit for domestic or world viewers." And someone tweeting as Patrick Photos posted this, "I'm really worried about BBC News having a more global focus rather than UK focus. What about the times when big events break in the UK during the hours to be covered under these proposals by Washington or Singapore? I fear that the local stories that now get a wider audience will be dropped. It will be a pretty sad day if this happens." Well, let's put those concerns to the man in charge, interim executive news editor of BBC News Channel, Paul Royal. Thank you for coming on Newswatch. Now, we've already seen some of the changes, like the loss of the paper review, the film review, Dateline London. What differences will there be from next week?
We're entering, I think, a really exciting phase for BBC News with the new channel. We're gradually bringing in the changes during April and early May. As you've said at the beginning there, some of the output will be combined. And so the way to sort of understand the channel is there are two main feeds. There's a global feed and there is a UK feed. And at some points they're combined, but at other times they're separate. So, for example, just to give you a sense of things, between 6 a.m. and 11 a.m. every day, every weekday, UK viewers will see BBC Breakfast and then the Nicky Campbell phone-in. And also then during the day, the 1, 6 and 10 o'clock news will also be on the UK feed, and also Newsnight is going to be introduced onto the UK feed as well.
So these are all programmes they could be consuming on other parts of the BBC output?
Absolutely, but as we know, people all consume in different ways, and some people will just consume BBC News through the news channel, not necessarily through BBC One, for example, or Radio 5 Live or BBC Two. So for news channel viewers in the UK, that's 7.5 hours of premium UK-facing programming and content built in every weekday before you get to the combined feed.
Now, What happens, this is what a lot of viewers are wondering, when you have a big global story like an election in a country, say in South America or Africa, and there's a big UK story, maybe a big political story that's breaking here, or a story like a major storm or flood that is really specific to the UK, and they're happening at the same time, what will UK viewers get?
Well, again, I could take you through that. If we had a big UK story that really didn't feel relevant to the combined global feed, we can go our separate way with the UK feed. Also, we're going to be introducing single story news streams into our coverage as well. And that's another layer of UK coverage that we'll be able to deliver.
How does that work?
So you could see that, for example, on the live page and the iPlayer, for example, and see a specific story there as well. So actually, the end result of all of this is actually more choice and more flexibility as opposed to a reduction.
So you're talking about potentially having the iPlayer as an outlet for a breaking UK story. You can't predict news, of course, when it will happen. So are you going to have a dedicated UK team on standby 24 hours for this kind of scenario?
Absolutely, yeah. And we've got a live and breaking team as part of the new structure for the channel team, and the newsroom is resourced in the same way.
So it doesn't sound like you're going to save that much money then.
There are significant savings. I mean, we're delivering value for licence fee payers. This is a value for all project, but also underpinning it is world-class journalism and our commitment to delivering for all audiences world-class impartial journalism, which we know they value and they want from the BBC.
Now, we've already heard from some UK licence fee payers who are unhappy that they feel they're getting a worse service. Essentially, it's a takeover of the UK channel by World News, isn't it, with some opt-outs?
It's not a takeover. I'll go back to what I said earlier in the sense that during the day, there are two feeds, a global feed and a UK feed. Sometimes they're combined. On any given weekday, there's 7.5 hours of UK-facing content built in to the schedule for UK viewers before you even think about the combined feed. And it could be that a UK story might be the top story globally on a given day, and also obviously significant UK stories will be in that combined rundown anyway. And because we're using new technology and we're innovating, we are going to have other ways and other flexible ways where we can deliver UK stories for audiences when we need to. So, for example, we've been rehearsing that and piloting this over the last few weeks, and I already know, sitting here today, there are stories next week where we will be breaking off to deliver them for UK audiences. So it's really exciting, and I'm actually really confident that we can deliver for UK licence fee payers. We're acutely aware of that. We're talking about that and thinking about that the whole time, and it's not the case that it's a sort of as simple as to say, oh, it's a takeover. Obviously, as we begin and we establish ourselves, there may be the odd imperfection along the way, and we'll learn from that and we'll take lessons from that.
Now, the World Channel has been funded by advertising. That's going to continue. And the UK viewers won't see those adverts. So what will they see in those ad breaks?
Well, there's a number of things they'll see. And actually, I'm glad you brought this up, because one of the things we're doing during those breaks is to bring in some stories from the UK nations and regions while the global feed is on those breaks. And that will help us get to lots of stories around the UK that might not necessarily find their way into a combined rundown, but they will be popping up a couple of times an hour during the day.
The thing about the World Channel is it's got a commercial imperative at its heart. And that means, for many viewers, that they don't think you're going to be fulfilling your obligations to viewers whose licence fee money is going into this new merged channel.
I think the answer to that, the commercial imperative and the way the BBC in news terms resonates around the world is through impartial world-class journalism. That's what audiences around the world want. That's what we're going to deliver, and that's what UK audiences want as well. So there isn't really a conflict there, because the way BBC News is sold around the world is because of its brilliant, impartial, world-class journalism.
All right, Paul Royal, thank you very much. Just time for a quick mention of what you've been contacting us about over the past few days, and coverage on Monday of the latest school shooting in the United States, in which 6 people were killed in Nashville, elicited contrasting responses. Colin Wildman objected to the disturbing nature of some of the footage shown of the shooter, asking, "For the love of God, will someone please explain what was the benefit of TV viewers seeing this?" But a viewer called John wrote, I am sick of news bulletins warning me that I might find an upcoming item distressing. They never show graphic images anyway, either being blurred or cut before anything too gory takes place. I'm not a child. Don't treat me like one. Last week, there were complaints from those tuning in to the news at 10, who instead found themselves watching The Apprentice You're Hired, the follow-up programme to the final of the reality show, The Apprentice, which had just finished on BBC One. The news bulletin went on air half an hour later than normal, and Lucy Berry declared herself appalled that the main news has been put back to make way for The Apprentice. Really do not understand why the BBC feels the need to change the schedule for this. Finally, Saturday's lunchtime news told us about a giant asteroid that was passing between the Earth and the Moon. The views of two astronomers, correctly described by the reporter, were quoted, but they were both labelled on screen as astrologers instead. Jonathan Green sighed. Oh, dearie me. Although I'm sure astronomers, Dr. Millard and Mr. Lound, would both see the funny side in the caption mistake, I would perhaps prefer to think both their predictions of an asteroid near miss of Earth today are based upon real space science and not on whether the signs of the zodiac are in some benevolent pattern. Thank you for all your comments this week. If you want to share your opinions about what you see or hear on BBC News, on TV, radio, online and social media, email newswatch@bbc.co.uk or you can find us on Twitter @NewsWatchBBC. You can call us on 0370 010 6676 and do have a look at previous interviews on our website bbc.co.uk/newswatch. Now, we're off the air next weekend over Easter, and when we return, our broadcast on the new news channel will be moved to a different later slot at 11:30 on Friday nights. We'll still be on BBC One 2 though at 7:45 on Saturday mornings and available to watch on the iPlayer. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.
Hello there. After